issues with the Annisquam River and dredging, and you can't get commercial traffic through there. Boats are running aground, and the Coast Guard cannot get their larger boats through there. And it's very difficult to put pressure on the Army Corps of Engineers to get them to do that. Does it make sense to approach the Coast Guard about the possibility of an alternate site, a secondary site, on the northern side of Gloucester to store smaller boats? That way they could react to emergencies in the Essex River Basin, Ipswich Bay. How long does it take them to go from Harbor Loop to Ipswich Bay now via the Annisquam River, or going all the way around the Cape? I would suggest it's 20, 25 minutes, a half an hour, and you really have to fly through the river to do that. If they were interested, would it be possible to get them to help improve the harbor a little bit, if they had some dockage in there? If not, the Coast Guard, possibly, I'm calling them the game wardens, but you know the Bureau of Natural Resources. If we can get more of that type of clientele there, is the government going to pay more attention to us? If we have that kind of interest, it's a matter of public safety. They can react to it a lot quicker. They could get over to Wingasheep Beach probably in 3 minutes.
I think it makes great sense. I think we should talk to them. Maybe not even in terms of permanent kind of a thing, but even if on an itinerant basis, for instance, on a busy weekend or at some other times. I don't think it would hurt us. My understanding is what's happening is they're actually starting to look at their so-called AORs, or areas of responsibility, to see if maybe some of those responses now should actually come from Station Merrimack River, because it's easier to cut across the bay than it is to come out and around. And I think actually some of the responses up toward Essex are coming from the Merrimack River, depending on what's going on in the Annisquam River in terms of tide and traffic. But it makes perfect sense to involve them in this conversation, because they're, if nothing else, an agency of the federal government, and likely to have stature in these discussions. And my experience in the past has been they're very willing to be part of them, so I think we should involve them.
Yes, Ian.
I love the.
Oh, no, go
I
ahead,
think we're
Peter.
going off the generic here, but since we are, I'm really picking up on dots. I love to connect, and I love the suggestion. If Damon were here, I think I can speak for him. He's actually pretty ingenious about extending the Rockport breakwater and completing that larger harbor, but I'll let him speak to that. But I'd love to see, Lanesville's always been a very resilient, independent, ingenious community. The breakwater itself, and I think Russ knows this, was started in 1828. That's all native materials there, and it was all done in service of the local granite industry. I'd be willing to bet if they really did a survey of the materials and speaking of rubrics, the need for infrastructure repairs and shovel-ready jobs, those terms have come up here. That Lanesville itself, and within the traditions of Lanesville, could really do some really interesting work on using leftover local materials that are abundant in the city-owned lands around here. Grout piles, piles of detritus stone and everything that I think could be used, or at least considered within a design project to do something on the breakwater. I think shovel ready, make jobs and infrastructure. Those are things you hear all over the time that transcend all this kind of stuff and link up with what Frank's saying about the availability of money and bonds and all this kind of stuff. I'd love to see a pilot program based on Lane's Cove to repair the breakwater according to the traditions of the village, and I really think it could be done. I'm not just spinning fantasies here, but there's a huge tradition here that could be really a model, I think, for what this village and the city itself could take credit for.
Without digressing too much, I'm going to give you a quick example of how that can happen. When we started to repair the jetties at the mouth of the Merrimack River, one of the things that we needed to do to try to drive down the cost was find a source of stone, because it's a materials intensive project. one of the folks that works with us on the Merrimack River Beach Alliance was actually able to find that Seabrook, the nuclear power plant, had enormous, vast amounts of stone that had been mined to create cooling tunnels out to the ocean. And as a condition of their relicensure, which is approaching, they needed to restore the area where that stone is stored. So they had a contract to get rid of it. So we were able to structure a deal where the contractor that's repairing those jetties is using the stone from the Seabrook nuclear power plant. The result of that is the cost of materials went down to the point where it made economic sense for the Corps to do the project. So they're basically spending money on labor but getting the stone for a lesser price. And actually Senator Kerry was heavily involved in helping us to make that arrangement. So if you can source local materials that are suitable, sometimes that can work. The difficulty that you get into is trying not to spend too much time to make something fit a project that's locally generated that doesn't really fit. So you have to make sure that it's suitable to begin with. But there's an example where it's literally saving millions of dollars and helping a project get done. That bridge is actually replicating something that's in the Washington, D.C. area. And heaven forbid we have something that looks like something that's anywhere else. So we are trying to actually make it look like a Cape Ann unique structure, and I think we're going to be able to accomplish that. And we may have some news on that shortly.
There's a gentleman over here, Jackie, that had a question.
I love the idea of the, three things I thought of. Number one, the shack. Look at the history of all the meetings, all the conversations, but at the end of the day, there are a few people in the room and others, but a number of people in the room who, up there, down here, who have really contributed to that happening. So somebody took the ball and ran with it. It wasn't just a nice idea, meeting goes away, everybody. So that there is some precedent, not just in the 1600s, Peter, but currently there's some precedent also of people digging in and doing stuff. I like the Coast Guard idea a lot because if you think about it, it makes absolutely no sense to go from Harbor Loop all the way out. If one of you are in trouble on a boat out here, you're dead. Forget, I mean, in the summer. So, but the problem is somebody's got to own that. Somebody's got to go to Ron Beck, who lives in Annisquam, or someone else around here who has some influence in the Coast Guard, who can actually push a button, who can get a meeting to, because if that doesn't happen, but that's a fantastic idea. That's leverage. That's what you were talking about earlier, Russell. Leverage point. That's a critical leverage point, because all the other stuff to me has, it all is in a process. But and the last thing is, I think that what worries me always about this whole process is that it's short term. A lot of people up there have already put a lot of time into this. That's what we've heard already. So the question becomes to me: how do you make this just not another meeting? Who takes the ball and actually converts the thing to to an engineering plan, to a quarrying project? I mean, somebody's got to take that ball, or everybody walks away, and it all blends back into the lists. Plural. That's all.
How many things have I walked away from so far, Ross?
You have. I'm not talking about you.
I'm on with it, because I have a whole lot of help in here, and there's one community in the city of Gloucester that if you give them a challenge, they pick it up and run with it. You have a lot of ingenuity, you have a lot of spunk out here. And I mean, you could throw a cannonball at the mainland, or at the island, and you'd be your own community out here. You're self-sufficient. I mean, other than not having the fire service that we all wish we had, we know we don't have the service for the Coast Guard. God forbid we get a police boat down here when there's huge parties, and I get the call at 3:30 in the morning from somebody sitting at the mouth of the bridge. You may as well jump off the side of the bridge and swim over them. It's awful, the amount of time it takes. I've been there with the harbor master 2 years ago. Fortunately, we have a grant that was just given to the police department. Applied for a grant. We've gotten 2 new trucks out of it. We've gotten 2 new boat engines. It looks as though the harbor master is going to be giving up one of the boats and giving it over to the police department like we used to have in the police department. And there'll be a lot more citations and enforcement on the river. Hopefully. hopefully. That's if they can get there and with the tides. So there are a lot of challenges, but Lanesville's met a lot of those challenges, and I'm gonna be challenging all of you. And there's a couple of email addresses I'll be looking for by the end of the night. You're on committees.
I'm on with
No more.
Ross, if I can take part of that lead from your challenge, and if I can, I'm gonna look to Representative Ferrante and Senator Tarbo. Love to be able to help and coordinate that meeting with DCR to come down. We'll have a site visit, and you know that's gonna be the first step. You know, Frank, getting back to your question, you know, it is important. We're not gonna abandon Lanesville. Absolutely, positively not. That will never be the position of the mayor. So let's take the first step and let's bring some of those people in here, the DCR and anyone else that the representative and the senator feel is appropriate, and we'll have that site visit and absolutely invite Jackie and let's take one step at a time.
The Coast Guard up there.
The Coast Guard is, they're very responsive, I think, from everyone sitting at the table, quite honestly. I mean, through all the emergency management situations we've had, Manny he's fantastic. Anyone here can pick up the phone and say, can we please convene a meeting? So, we'll be happy to do that also.
So, Jim, I wanted to say that there's resources here for, sort of to contextualize where this structure has been over the last, 70, 80 years because of photographs and pictures that have been taken. And the wall has come down numerous times and built back up numerous times.
Okay.
So I'm suggesting that you reach out and find the photographs that are necessary to do the presentation that you would like to do to whomever. So that's another way that we could help you, you know.
Okay, I think
Take the
that.
picture,
thank
so to speak.
All right, yeah, pictures, you know,
This is how
1,000
important it
words,
is to us.
without a doubt. I mean, absolutely, and I will, I'm gonna rely, you know, as I have over the past 5.5, 6 years, relied on Jackie and, to be my point of contact for you, for the community here. So I'll be, coordinating that with Jackie, okay? Is that all right with you? Okay.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking
No,
somebody.
no,
Say no! Absolutely, absolutely. That's what we're here for.
right, right. So,
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, so from here, we're gonna leave it up to you to get these names together. We'll let everybody know when the next meeting will be. We'll make a decision amongst ourselves whether it's best to have the whole contingency or we start forming committees and sometimes you get more done with the smaller committee people. And you take it back to the larger body. And I'm sure you've learned that on the SOS. So, yes, Russell?
One last thing is just to get that boat ramp repaired this year.
Before the summer?
If it means we go down there and build forms and pour them on land and you drag them over there and put them in there.
Waterways, Tony Gross, and the Harbor Master.
I already talked to Tony tomorrow, but I mean, that's something that, you know, we brought that up again last year.
How much money does the Waterways Board have?
Oh, I think they can do some transfers
I mean,
between funds here and there.
yeah, I mean, I think they have,
They have dedicated money for certain things.
they do, and they have a continuous revenue stream, I mean, you know, as a result of, you know, with moorings and things of that nature, and, but, you know, as Mike said, he will reach out to, I don't know how much would the project cost, do we have any idea of?
It's not that big
It's
a
not that
project.
big of a project, it should be able to be done.
Okay,
It's a public landing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Pretty reasonable.
they've repaired it in the past, we actually repaired it for them, but they
Okay.
fund it.
The only one we got.
okay,
I think Bill Stoll would be happy if it was done, instead of people going on
Yeah.
the beach.
I will, on behalf of the mayor, I'll absolutely help advocate for that also, out of the Waterways Board, you know, to help them recognize that.
Jim, would you let us know too if there's a gap? that we can
Absolutely.
help with? I mean, it doesn't sound like a large project.
No,
Right.
it's not.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
What's the definition of large? Is it 10,000 or 100,000? I mean, I don't know.
It's on the low
Oh,
side.
fine, all right.
Mooring fees were increased by $2 a foot, and because of the ramp, people are unable to launch their boats. You have moorings in the cove.
Okay.
Because of the wall falling in.
Surprise.
It's where the
What a
water's
surprise.
going.
Okay, all right.
The northerly side.
Could I raise one more quick issue? It seems to me that you guys are gonna go off tomorrow and deal with 8 zillion problems, one of which is us. But we're not really gonna make a ton of progress unless there's a group in Lanesville that is specifically charged with doing whatever needs to be done to come as close as we can to getting the wall rebuilt. And so then the question becomes, is it just a bunch of people that start meeting together, or is this something that makes some sense to have the mayor put together? And which would give the group a little more legitimacy. And I don't know the answer to that, because up here in Lanesville, we don't really need to be told by the mayor that we should have a group, but sometimes it helps, at least in terms of dealing with the outside world. And so,
I would be completely on board with that suggestion, but I think that's probably one step further right now. I would love to be able to, let's convene the meeting that the senator has offered to bring the people for the site visit in here. We'll better understand what we're up against collectively as a community. All right, if is everyone okay with that, if we try and approach it that way? So we're one step away from that, then we can, okay?
Just explain to me again why we're one step away from
I
that?
can't hear you, would you speak up?
Yeah, could you just explain to me again why we're one step away from that?
Well, because when we have a committee, then it's gonna be a matter of outlining the steps going forward of what are the obstacles, what things need to be done. So I think if we are able to have, let's say, DCR come in and better understand and work with the representative and the senator with potential funding sources, then when we convene the meeting, we will be able to have an outline of what the team or the group needs to do going forward. But let's first get some input from, let's say, DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, and understand a little bit better some potential funding sources and timelines with that. Instead of meeting and then saying, okay, what do we need to do? And then convening those meetings. I think that would be my suggestion. If I'm wrong on that.
I would just chime in that I agree with what Jim's saying, just because right now there are so many different issues that are going on all at the same time, that in working with the state has to be a partner in this. So we need time to get them here to say, okay, you understand all of everything that's going on here right now. Here's what we want to do, here's what we're thinking, what are you thinking? And then we have an identified path that we're all walking down. Otherwise, if you jump ahead, then one group wants to go in this direction, the other group goes in that direction, the states go, no, you're coming in the wrong direction, and then before you know it, we're spending more time circling the wagons in the right direction than if we just would have laid out the steps the way they should have been done and just go down the path,
so you're gonna bring DCR, the next step is.
Yeah, Bruce and I will bring DCR down, and we'll also have a conversation with the Army Corps as well, just to figure out what everybody's responsibility is and how we all see ourselves working together, and then I think it would be great to have a local committee that comes in and helps push all of that forward and pull all of that together.
When the DCR comes, it'll be, what, a public thing, or just a private meeting, or how's that gonna work?
We'll call the commissioner.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with a public
No, I think
discussion.
Jackie, my intention was to let Jackie know when, and then whomever was available during that time
Okay.
would be available to attend.
It probably wouldn't be the same format as this, I think it would be a discussion, and we can talk to them, but I think it does make sense. Let's define the task first, and then put the task force together. And that's the way it'll work best, I think. But.
What are we looking for a timeframe?
Well, let me think about that. Within the month, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say within a month. It won't be as early as next week, because that's when the House deliberates its budget. So I won't be available, and a lot of the administration will be watching what we're doing, to see how the budget amendments are being handled. So I would say probably the latter half of that next week, or the beginning of the week after that.
Okay, let's
So-
be a little bit flexible with the dates, because we're dealing with budgets on this end too,
Yeah.
so.
And we will be as well, so we've gotta
Yeah.
thread the needle a little bit.
Yeah, so I would say in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
And, but in the meantime, I will discuss with Tony tomorrow, in regards to that, the boat ramp, absolutely, okay? And, if it's all right with you, I'll just call him directly.
Sure.
All right. Great, thanks.
Yeah, sure. Before we close, anyone else have anything else that they'd like to add to the seawall issue? If not, I'll open it up for 5 or 10 minutes to any issue that's you have on your mind regarding Ward 4. We have a captive audience here tonight, and you might want to avail yourself of it. So if there's anything you'd like to ask, I think everybody's amenable to answer any questions. Anybody? Oh, I was just gonna say, seeing none, we'll adjourn.
Well, I'm at Bayview Fire Station. I just came back and the first thing I noticed is that fire station's closed again.
It is, and
We've been
trust me,
abandoned.
that was the first thing that I had noticed also. What I can tell you that we are in active discussions with the union, and we are working together to have put forward a potential solution that you will recognize
This is
that
getting
being,
ridiculous.
that being-
I mean, this is a
absolutely.
huge safety issue. You know how far away we are.
yes.
Heaven
Yes.
forbid anything happened down here, somebody's gonna die, and it's just because that stupid station isn't open. And there's no reason for it, none. We got 300,000 from windmills. Why isn't that station open? I don't care about contracts. It should be open.
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I got a question for Joe.
Sid.
I'm sorry. What are those green circles made around the manholes?
Those are air relief valves for the step system. And those air relief valves, we've identified them, we're replacing a dozen or 2 dozen of those. And that's just to signify that those are the ones that have been addressed. So we're trying to keep it low.
Will be addressed.
Either have or will be addressed. We've done, I just bought 12, I think I just bought 12 more air relief valves. They're integral to the step system because, as you can imagine, you do get air in the system from the pumps. And you want a place for that air to come out so it decreases, the force it takes to move the effluent along.
So that doesn't mean that the manhole itself is due to be reset upwards?
No, it's a component as big as that water bottle
Alright.
inside there.
Yes, Ann, go ahead.
What was the construction going on the Lanesville side of the Annisquam Bridge? What was that about?
Okay, so that is a water control vault structure. The old water tower, the one that was taken down last summer, that water never exercised well. It just stayed as a big column of water above all the water mains in the city. And we kind of measure water quality on the age of the water. And that water would become aged to a point where the disinfectant levels would be too low and perhaps unsafe to put in the distribution system. If you had a big water main break in Washington Street, the tower would dump into the system. It still provided the pressure, it still provided fire protection if there was a big event up here. But the tower wasn't necessarily designed properly for this area. The water mains were a little oversized for this area. So the tank's down now, the new tank's going in. The cost of rehabilitating the old tank was almost as much as building a new tank. It made more sense to build a new tank than rehabilitate a 25-year-old tank. What that construction did on Washington Street is when this tower becomes full, it radios that vault to shut a series of valves. So now every home or business north of that will start drawing down that tower. So it exercises the water level in there, keeping it fresh. When it reaches a certain level, a couple 100,000 less, it signals back, it opens up. It also isolates this area in the case of emergency. Say, if we ever had something wrong with the water treatment plant, we could isolate everything north of that vault, Annisquam, Bennett Street, Revere Street, all the way up to the line, and we could either run Klondike as our water supply, or we could have the intermunicipal connection with Rockport open. Rockport can't provide us with enough water for the whole city, but they could provide enough water for this section of town. And we didn't pick that just because it's this section of town. It's really the only point that doesn't loop back around. And it's sized so that Klondike could supply this area with water. So that's what it does.
Excellent.
Ross?
Yes?
I just want to be complimentary that I was born and raised here, and now all of a sudden I'm finding myself getting old. And in the process of observing how things work, I think that a lot of the decisions that have been made about hiring people, some of which are in this room, by the mayor, have been very good decisions. Things have changed. The fire I was out in California for 4 years. You want to live in a place that's chaos. And so you come back here and you see people putting windows in shacks, and you see people coming out for meetings like this. When the roads were flooded on Washington Street, that guy there, Duggan, was there. He didn't, he didn't bucket. He came down. He actually got his feet wet, literally. He knows where Lanesville is. You know where Lanesville is. Jackie knows where Lanesville is. They know where Lanesville is. 60 years ago, when I was a kid, nobody knew where Lanesville was. Now, but the other thing I wanted to say that goes with this is that we witnessed 3 or 4 deaths in this city in the last few years. And it obviously doesn't matter how close you are to a fire station. You can die within a mile. So you only have seconds. Seconds. So for me, what I like about the spirit of North Gloucester is that people actually are getting involved in their community, not just to push the seawalls, but to do things actively. You have a vibrant community here, and